I'm J.R. Butler, co-founder of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes into being a professional technology salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change. What's up, kid?
What's up, JR?
How we doing, man? I'm excited. This is our first inaugural episode.
Yeah, no pressure.
We got to carry this. We don't have a guest this time. So I think, like, John, what I would love to cover for our audience is talk a little bit about the origin story of the company that we started. Tell a little bit about, why we picked Merchants of Change for the name of our podcast. Make sure that people understand what the show is and who it's for. And then we can kind of hit some of the recurring topics that we're going to hit every episode with different guests from around the sales universe. Does that sound like a good plan to you, my man?
Yeah, that's good. And I think for everybody who's listening now, I think the place, when you talk about Shift Group, the place to start is with JR. So I'm going to let you kick it off, but why don't you tell the listeners, it's everybody's first time. Tell us about yourself. Tell us how Shift Group came to be. What's your background? Who are you?
Yeah.
I know who you are, but
So I think, from a background perspective, for those that haven't heard me talk about myself on other podcasts, I grew up in the Massachusetts area, Central Mass for life. And I grew up in a big hockey household. My father was a legendary high school hockey coach for about 40 years. Marlborough High School. I was destined to be on the ice. I grew up playing hockey, football and baseball. But hockey was kind of always the number one choice. I was lucky enough to go away after my first 2 years of public school. I got the opportunity to play hockey in prep school. And because of that opportunity, I got to play in college at Holy Cross. Was part of some great teams there, including a team in 2006, aging myself a little, but that upset Minnesota in the regional. And then, one day, like everybody else, my hockey career was over and I was a lost puppy. And that's kind of where...
You were Cushing, right?
Cushing. Yeah. Cushing. Yeah. Cushing, and then Holy Cross. 8 years of Purple. And actually, my first company that I worked for out of school was also Purple. So I did like 12 years of Purple. And according to my mother, I look great in Purple. So that's okay. And that's kind of where Shift Group started is, back in, I'd say the summer of 2008 when I was lost, thinking about going to law school because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. I was having a conversation with a guy at a bar in Marlborough that knew me from men's league hockey. He asked me what I was going to do. I told him I think I'm going to go take the LSAT and go to law school. And he legitimately laughed in my face. And he's like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." And
I probably would have laughed too.
I was like, "What do you mean, man?" He's like, "Listen," he's like, you're obviously a competitive dude. You're super resilient, to play Division I hockey. You had to work your butt off. You're competitive. He's like, "Listen, I own a tech business. I'm looking for like entry level salespeople. I think you should come and try it out." And he's like, "I guarantee you'll make $250,000 within 3 years." And I was kind of like, "Dude, I don't own a computer." Like literally, I was like, "I don't know anything about technology." He's like, "That doesn't matter. That's not what selling technology is. Just come and I'll teach you." And that's.
I think, yeah, that's who the show's for. Everybody listening in for the first time, you kind of hearing about JR's background and him growing up in Marlborough, Massachusetts, playing hockey. And some guy off the street telling him, "Hey, don't do law school, go sell technology." So if you're out there listening, like, what are these guys talking about? I think that's who this podcast is for, right? The Merchants of Change, getting people into sales, aware of software sales and career and technology. I think if you told me at 18 what technology sales was, I'd probably look at you sideways like, no, I'm gonna be an accountant. So I think people struggling in understanding what's available out there for careers, I think that's a good background. You didn't start off with, hey, this is what I'm going to do my whole life. You just kind of stumbled into it.
Absolutely. And I was lucky. I had like incredible mentors right from day one. Guys that took me under my wing, or under their wing, I should say, and just showed me the ropes, right? Like showed me what it meant to be a professional salesperson. I compare it to like my little brother, his first year, playing pro hockey in Ottawa, and, Alfie, the captain of the Senators, taking him under his wing and, explaining to him like, hey, this is what it means to be a pro, right? So I was surrounded by people that made me really understand that, number one, you can make as much, if not more, than a professional athlete doing this career if you're a professional. And this is what it means to be a professional. So I took that to heart. I would love to tell you I took it to heart from day one, but I definitely didn't. It was not an easy transition for me. I had a lot of anger about, my career being over, losing my identity as an athlete. Those things were a struggle. But I think once I really got my feet underneath me and understood that, I could be a professional salesperson, that's when things really picked up for me on the job front and the career front. I spent 6 years at that company, and then I was lucky enough to be an early employee at a fast growth startup in Boston. And we grew the business significantly, 100% year over year, every year for 6 years. We did 27 quarters of consecutive year over year growth. And I got to move into leadership. I went from a individual contributor to a sales leader in my first 3 months at the company, and then never really looked back. I loved helping younger salespeople find what I found in my mentors and me. That was kind of the most rewarding part of my career, my whole life. And was there again for probably about 6 years. Got an opportunity to be a chief revenue officer at a really early stage company. So I got to see kind of Series A to a $2 billion exit. And then I got to see, pre-Series A with a founder-led company.
So you were pretty good at sales.
I'm all right, I think.
I would say you found your groove. I got a question for you though. Like, so before the LSAT example, like when you were younger, like, when we were hanging out at Holy Cross, even before that, like, what did you think you were going to do for a career? Like if somebody asked 18, 19-year-old JR Butler, what are you going to do for a career? Did you have any idea?
I actually kind of did want to be a lawyer, dude. And now that you asked me that, like, I my first semester at Holy Cross, I was an econ major, and I got my first C ever in my entire life, freshman fall semester in econ, because it was a math class and I was not good at math. And that's when I switched to sociology. And I just assumed like, okay, obviously no one's going to pay me to be a sociologist. So I can take this, which is a lot of writing, reading, etc. And I can probably be a lawyer and make a lot of money. So I think I probably thought I was going to be a lawyer. But, if you ask me when I was 15, I thought I was going to play in the NHL, right? I don't think anybody else did, but that's what I thought I was going to do. So yeah, I would say like lawyer was probably always in the back of my head.
Do you think it's because like lawyers on TV, they're always, interrogating people and it's like flashy, or were you just like, looking for a way to make money? Because lawyers, I'm just asking because my goal was just to make money. I was like, I don't know.
I think it's probably like lawyers on like, they're handsome and wear nice suits and like drive nice cars. So it was probably the money thing. And I do like the idea of like, I've always been pretty good with people, like interacting with other humans. So I thought that skill would pay off as a lawyer for sure. Why did you always want to make money? Like how did that motivate you?
Well, like I just remember there were certain times growing up, and I didn't grow up too far from you down in Mansfield, Massachusetts, where I saw kind of limitations around money. You know, you could get into certain different types of hotels or different events if you had more money. And I was always attracted to like, I don't want to have limitations with things, you know, like it was big picture stuff for a young kid, but I was like, you know, if I can find a way to make a lot of money, then I can go over there or I can buy that and I can do that. So it was more like, how can I enable myself? And it's funny, but to your point, like when I was young, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor. Like, I was like, I'm going to do med school. And then I was like, maybe I'll be in finance or accounting because that seemed like a ton of money. And, you know, I really didn't care. I was lucky enough to kind of be a versatile student and I could kind of pick where I wanted to play, but I just wanted to make money. If you told me I was going to be selling technology to businesses, I would have been like, no, that doesn't sound like anything I would ever do.
Well, we've gotten up to the point in my career where, you know, the whole Shift Group thing started. Before I go into that, why don't you talk a little bit, John, about your journey? So like you haven't been in sales as long as I have been.
No.
You're probably at like 35 quarters compared to my 55, but still a lot. But can you just talk about like, you know, like I remember when you made the transition. Can you talk about your journey from Holy Cross into the working world and then into sales?
Yeah. So for everybody listening out there, I'm currently based in Toronto, but I grew up in Massachusetts, not far from JR. Went to Holy Cross. I played football for a few years there, not too long. We weren't that good, and it was a lot of work. But I played, I think, defensive line, and I didn't think I was going to go to the NFL. So I spent most of my time thinking about what I was going to do after college. And Holy Cross is a big economics school, finance, accounting, lawyers, doctors. It's a liberal arts school, but it's very the alumni are very focused in that area. So a lot of my friends were like, "Yeah, we're going to work on Wall Street." I was like, "That sounds like a great idea." So I focused on economics, and I was pretty good at math. But I also, you know, just to that point, wanted to make money. So I graduated thinking I was going to go to Wall Street, and it turns out that a lot of our buddies at Holy Cross actually already had connections on Wall Street or family members on Wall Street. I did not have that at all. So, you know, slinging your resume out to these financial institutions during the worst collapse in the world's history in the economy. Maybe not world history, but yeah, the financial crisis of 2008, 2007, like just killed me. I was walking around town applying to banks. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
They're like, "We're closing tomorrow. Actually, we don't exist anymore."
That's true. They were like, "Yeah, we're going out of business, and we're super regulated." So I was that guy. I actually worked in a liquor store in my hometown, and funny story about that. But I was in this liquor store, and a few months later, a woman was in there talking about how her daughter just got accepted to Holy Cross. And I was like, "Oh, I just graduated from there." And she was like, looking at me as the cashier, and she was like, "No, it's a good school." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I know." So yeah, I'm sitting there with a Holy Cross degree, which in the 90s, you're like, you graduate, you can go to Wall Street, whatever. Yeah. But during the financial crisis, it was tough. So I got a job at a bank. I started going to work at a bank, a federal bank in Boston. And I was taking the bus at night over to UMass Boston, doing my MBA. And, you know, all the glitz and glamour of finance wasn't there for me. It was like after a few months of just doing Excel spreadsheets and reports and printing out PDFs and analyzing data, I was like, I just want to talk to people. You know, I just want to like, why aren't we talking to people? We're just doing numbers. So it took me about 5 years of doing finance and banking until I actually, you know, was exposed to other people, my friends, my brother, my cousins, all these people selling software. And I saw their page, you, JR, like, and a lot of my friends were like, what are you doing? Why are you in banking? So I was at this point where I was like, wait a second, I just did my MBA. I'm invested in this. I'm finance, accounting. And then I had to quit. And I was like, this is hard. So I think where you got in, where that guy pointed you to software sales early on, for me, it was like a mid-20s career change. And for those of you listening, that aren't in college or aren't about to apply to their first job, if you're in a career, like, it's totally normal. It's totally normal to make the change. In 1999, you have to stay at the same company for 20 years in order to have that credibility. But in 2022, totally normal to make a career transition.
The average person changes their career 7 times in their life, not their job, their career. So you're absolutely right, 100%.
Yeah, it's a big thing when you think about it, and it gets to you. I was like, should I quit finance? Should I do this? I remember taking an entry-level sales job, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right time for me. So I had a lot of hesitations.
Did you get the first job you interviewed for? I forget.
No.
What was that like? What was the interview process like? How'd you go about it?
So here I am working at a bank, and I go out to my car and I take a phone interview with a sales manager talking about selling hardware at the time. So it's like a division of a software company that sells the actual machines. I had no idea what to expect. And I got in the car and started talking to this sales manager, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't like finance. Like, it's terrible. I heard sales is way better. Like, I got my MBA, 4.0 this, GPA that, like, I'm taking my CFA, Series 7, whatever. Like, throwing all these certifications and buzzwords at the sales manager, and I had no personality, no excitement. And he was like, hey, sorry, you're never going to sell anything. So actually, it's funny you asked that, because then I probably called you. I definitely called, like, my brother and some of my friends and was like, can you help me? And I called some people in sales, and I was like, what? Like, how did I have a master's? How did I not get this interview? But it turns out, like, that whole getting a sales job is totally different. It's totally different from other jobs. You're evaluated different mindset.
So your first gig, you went right to a big company, right? Yeah.
I worked at a major Fortune 500 company selling software, and it was entry level, and I was the older person in the group of entry level salespeople. But yeah, I actually I kind of really enjoyed that route. I didn't plan on that, but having been a customer, somebody who used software, learning a little bit more about the finance industry, it actually helped me in my sales career. And when I was able to take that and spin that in the interview and say, hey, I actually have real world experience, let me tell you why it matters, and be positive about making a change, I think that was well received. It took me about three or four interviews to get that first job.
And how long before you were in the seat, before you were like, this is it, like, this is what I want to do forever?
Oh, it was for me, it was very quick. Yeah. Like, I remember I joined, and I sat down, and they said, yeah, so you're supposed to call 30 people a day. And at the time, at the bank I was working at, I was calling hundreds of people a day. So I was like, I talked to my manager. I said, so what do I do when I'm done with the 30? And he said, you're done for the day. And I said, I'll be done at 9:30. I said, I could get, like, this seems easy. And it just, I don't know. It felt like almost like too good to be true. I didn't feel like I was, grinding over variance analysis and interest rates. I was calling people on the phone and asking them if they wanted to talk to me. Like, right. It felt very natural to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, you're calling with a solution to a potential problem that they have. And it's really about, one thing I liked about it is, like, you can figure out together pretty quickly if it's worth either of your time to spend more time together. You know what I'm saying? Like, you either have this problem that we solve and it's big enough of a problem that it's worth spending some time figuring out if we can help you solve it. That was like the thing that I always loved about it, is like, you don't really waste, you don't really waste time necessarily. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't waste time, and you just cut to the chase. You know, and like, there's so much nonsense out there about it scared the daylights out of me. I was like, applying to these sales jobs, and people are like, well, you've never closed anyone. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, is this something I was researching? How do I close people? And like, you hear this with the buzzwords and the social media, sales experts are like, all kinds of like, they make it sound very challenging. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And, you got to have banked, and you got to do this. And they make it sound like it's some crazy thing that you have to understand. But to me, when I got into sales, I was like, this is just connecting people and talking sensibly about something and getting them to write their name on a contract.
I think like it comes down to, becoming, it's like anything, right? If I'm going to give you advice about something, and this doesn't really actually happen in today's world with social media because everybody thinks they're an expert, but like true expertise is becoming a subject matter expert in a specific area, and then using that expertise to help people make decisions. That's really what selling is, right? It's like, there are a lot of, especially on LinkedIn, these influencers out there that think they have the magic silver bullet of like how to sell and how to be a great salesperson. It comes down to like anything else. It's hard work on becoming an expert and getting really knowledgeable about the problem that you solve, how you solve it uniquely, and why that problem matters to the person you're talking to, depending on
absolutely
the company they're at, their title, the industry that they're in. If you do those things and you have a human conversation with somebody, you can sell, I think, anyway.
I couldn't agree more. And if you're out there listening, like, who are these two guys, from Massachusetts talking about Merchants of Change podcast? Like, if you're out there wondering what to do next and you stumbled upon this, like, this is what we're going to be doing, is talking to guests who are sales professionals, very successful in their careers, and normal people. We're going to be talking to normal people. There's no nonsense here about, you have to do this to do that. It's just, we're going to be talking to normal people and how they're making 6-7 figures selling software, and how you can do it too. And there's really no, rocket science involved. I don't know. Is that a good, am I overselling it? But
No, I think you're right on. Like, I think it's not, there's no special certifications here needed. There's no there's no right or wrong way. It's about, bringing to bear the characteristics that make anybody great at anything. Hard work, intellectual curiosity, resiliency. Like, those are the reasons why people have success, right? And some people have a little bit more. And I'm one of these people that, because they picked the right company to go do it at, right? Like, that's really as simple as it gets. Like, great salespeople, there's great salespeople at every company. It doesn't matter. There's people that are subject matter experts that, work with their customers in a great way, that have a great sales process or methodology. Those are the people that we want to go out and talk to and learn from them how they found the career, how they found success, what areas they think that the younger folks and the people newer to the industry should be thinking about as they move into their career. I think that's what it's all about.
That's it. It's totally if you're in sales and you're listening, you should already know this, but you can get better. Like, I tell this to people all the time. Just because you're in sales and you sold a bunch of software and or sold a bunch of real estate, whatever it is, you can constantly get better. And I have to challenge myself. I know, JR, you do this better than most people, but I challenge myself to like read books and listen to podcasts and watch videos and, tighten up my sales process and tighten up my sales game, because yeah, you closed, $500 million in a deal. That's great. But you still have to go close another deal next quarter, and you're going to see different things. Like, I don't think people understand that is like, if you're good at sales, yeah, that's great. But there's going to be a new technology in 3 years that you've never even heard of that impacts your business. So you have to always be brushing up on your game, just like an athlete, always be practicing, learning. I think that's what a lot of salespeople get wrong. So if you're looking to get into sales, this is a good podcast. But if you're in sales and you're just looking to learn what other successful salespeople are doing to stay fresh, I think it will also be a great learning experience.
That's a good transition to Shift Group, John. So I think it was 2019. You and I were talking a lot, and you were kind of starting or in the middle of writing your book, right? Can you just talk a little bit real quick about like the book,
Yeah, so I wrote a book. It's for sale. No, it's yeah. So for everybody listening, I wrote a book called How to Get a Sales Job based on my experience of transitioning from finance to software and everything I learned in between. So I was sick and tired of explaining myself on phone calls or in emails to people who were like, "Hey, how'd you get that sales job? How'd you get into sales?" So I just wrote it down, and then after a few years of sending out emails on how to do it, I just put it into a book. And it's on Amazon, How to Get a Sales Job. And yeah, I was writing that right around the same time we started talking about, I guess we were bored. I don't really remember how we started talking about it.
Well, so I've been getting phone calls for literally 15 years from my hockey buddies, like being like, JR, you're not that smart. You make a lot of money. Help me get into tech sales. Right. And I started sending you some kids too, because I knew you were writing the book. And, we said, me and you, we're like, listen, dude, like we're giving these guys some awesome advice and we're helping these companies find some awesome candidates. I think there's a business here. And I think we bought the Shift Group domain in like May 2019 when I first moved to Arizona. I remember sitting at a cigar bar, Fox Cigar Bar in Scottsdale, smoking a stogie and like setting it up on GoDaddy and being like, this is so sick. And then we were like, all right, let's try to help a bunch of kids for free. And I think we set a goal of like 10 kids. And I said, once we do 10 kids, this could be a business. And that's kind of that's how I remember it started.
That's it wasn't anything more than that. I think my book was either in progress or already out there, and then you were naturally helping people. I was naturally helping people, and I like to think I have a big network, but then I talk to you and I'm like, oh man, I need to meet more people. But I think having a big network, it was, I keep saying naturally, but it was a natural progression. We both have large networks, been successful in sales, and people are asking us, hey, how'd you do that? I took the academic approach of putting it down on paper, and you were just doing it word of mouth and you helped a lot of people. So when we put it together, now you have this business, this model where we're helping people make that transition. And when you told me, hey, I'm going to call it Shift, I was like, that's a great name. I was like, this is a solid name and it might actually work. So yeah, I think it's a very organic story.
100%. I remember our first business model. Do you remember the pricing page that I built? It was like
you showed me a PowerPoint one time, and I was like, "What is this?"
It was like college athletic scholarship, minor league contract. Let's go. We were gonna actually charge people to help them get jobs. Like we didn't even think about the other side of the market where companies pay agencies like ours all the time for great candidates. Like the original, I think we might have charged one kid, dude. We should probably call that kid back with money.
Yeah, I think we were both kind of like, okay, we're both helping a lot of people get jobs. maybe they'll pay us, but that's not how it works. So
No.
you know, and you know what's funny is I'm 99% sure but I think the first person we placed was randomly Holy Cross athlete.
Yeah, after we incorporated the company. So we were doing it for free for a while, and then finally, like through COVID, we're both getting super busy because so many guys were retiring from pro sports at the same time that I was like, dude, we're going to incorporate. You went and got the LLC, and we went live. We like published the website for like public consumption, and we're like, all right, how do we find guys now? And then we ended up with a Holy Cross football player, like right on our doorstep. He was the first kid we ever placed. And then, that was July 7th of 2021. And, it's been pretty much due to rocket ship since. So
it feels like a bit of a blur with, especially with, tie in the pandemic during this, and, you're out in Arizona, I'm in Toronto, but yeah, for, I think if you're interested in getting into software sales and you have an athletic background, or a student athlete, former retired professional athlete, like I would reach out immediately. We've had some crazy success stories and very interesting backgrounds. I remember talking to a girl who, didn't qualify for the Olympics and then was told to get a job, and, other people holding out on interviewing for a role because they're in the NFL draft. And it's just it's been a crazy year and a half, but yeah.
A lot of folks working in retail or, selling fitness subscriptions at gyms, things like that. Absolutely.
A lot of people work in gyms or coaching after sports. I don't know. I've found that to be like, a couple of people, I talked to somebody who went to one of the military academies who was a coach, and I was like, look, if you graduate from a military academy, I'm sure you could sell software to somebody. And so we're out here trying to make, this podcast and spread awareness. And I think these episodes will be good. I think it'll be really good especially for younger people that are like questioning what to do next.
Yeah. And I just want to hit on real quick before we wrap up this first episode, the name of the podcast that we chose. So Merchants of Change, right? There's a guy, I talked about mentorship, right? And mentorship being a huge part of my career. And one of the reasons that I think we both started the company is because we enjoy that. Like we enjoy helping people and being mentors. So one of my biggest mentors is this guy, Jim McInerney. He's the guy who brought me over to Turbo early days. He helped build out like a world famous inside sales program at EMC. He's gone on to a couple other like absolute winners from a company perspective. And he always had a sign behind his desk called Merchant of Change. And the reason I got the okay from him to name the podcast that is because I always stuck with me, because I always thought of myself as a merchant of change, right? A merchant is a person who trades in commodities produced by other people. They trade with like foreign countries. They're involved in business or trade. Merchants have been around, it's one of the oldest professions in the world, right? It's as long as industry, commerce, and trade have existed, merchants have existed. And that's what salespeople are, merchants, right? Now, what you're actually selling, in my opinion, in software is change, right? Like software is changing the way that people do their job, the way they interact with the companies they work for and the companies they buy stuff from. So what you have to do as a salesperson is you have to go in and you have to convince people to change their business as usual, to change the way they're doing things. So the name is really in honor of Jim, but it's also like the idea that, getting into this career, you're becoming your own merchant of change, right? Like that's what I think. It's a super powerful name, and I love that he let us use it. But I think that's going to be a recurring theme in every episode, is talking about like, what's your approach to convincing people to change, because that's really what sales is. You know what I mean?
I love it. And I actually didn't even know that. I saw you name this podcast and I was like, oh, that's a sick name. And I was like, but hearing that is like, it's good to hear where it stems from. But for everybody who's kind of like thinking about this, like that's very powerful, because think about it. Like, you're looking for a career, right? Everybody looks for a career. People have all kinds of ideas about what happens in a career, but selling technology is an age-old profession. It's been happening for thousands of years, and people have been trying to sell, all kinds of different technologies. Ours just happens at the time to be software, but I think Henry Ford convincing people to ride in automobiles versus horses is selling a technology. And technology is always going to change. I don't care what people think, like, this is it, metaverse, web 3.0, whatever it is. No, that's going to be old news in a year and a half. Just like AOL, just like CD players. Like, it's all going to be, technology is technology is exponential, which means you're always going to have something to sell. You're always going to have value to bring. If it stops, we're going to have bigger problems. If technology just stops and innovation stops, the world's going to just end. Go ahead.
So the first tech sales guy is that caveman rolling a wheel out of the cave and being like, "Look at this thing. I think that this thing could be valuable." That's the first tech sales guy. That's our logo, dude. Yeah. That is our logo.
And then you got the guys in the 80s and 90s selling mainframe, hardware, saying this is the future. It's never going to get better. Now, Microsoft's out here saying you don't need hardware, just put it in the cloud. That's going to be old news so quickly, and you're going to have to learn and think on your feet. So yeah, it's a very challenging career. I think, because you always have to be learning, and you always have to be like challenging yourself to keep up with the technology. But I mean, man, if there is career safety, I think technology is a safe bet. Just look at the stock markets. Yep. Look at the $1 trillion companies. They're not like retail stores. It's technology.
Well, listen, the good news for everybody is they're not just going to have to listen to you and I chatter all the time. We're going to bring on a guest every week, and we're going to talk about, their path to sales, the things that they think matter, and like how they show up every day as a merchant of change. So, John, this is exciting, dude. I'm pumped, obviously, as always, to work with you, and this is going to be fun, man. Thank you.
I love it. We'll keep them fun too. I know we're just talking about the podcast right now, but I think me and you kind of interrogating people is going to be pretty fun too.
Hilarious. Awesome. All right, buddy. Have a good time. Stay warm up there in Canada, kid.
All right, later.
Later, kid.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.